I don't even know where to start. It all just happened so fast that even now, I want to believe this is some kind of twisted nightmare I'll soon wake up from. But deep down, I know this is all too real. And here I am, sitting in the bathtub of a locked bathroom, in an old house that's barely holding itself together in the middle of the woods, with nothing but a few notes, and a bottle of whiskey, and my father's old 12-gauge shotgun, and only 2 shells left. Through the window, I can see the sun is slowly setting. It won't take long before they arrive. Maybe they're already out there, hiding in the shadows, watching me, waiting for the last light to fade. I can already feel their gaze upon me, and even though I can't see them yet, they know I'm here. Alone, vulnerable, and with no way to escape the fate creeping to me. I don't even know why I'm bothering to write this note, since I doubt anyone's still out there. Maybe I'm just hoping that someone who finds it will understand and escape before it's too late, before they notice him. But if you're reading this and you already know they're aware of you, just do yourself a favor and end it. You don't want to know what they do to the poor souls once they get their hands on them. I leave you one last shell. And if you're confused about what's going on here, or why it's happening, I don't know either. Maybe I don't even want to know. The only thing I can tell you is who I am and how everything started falling apart. So if you insist on reading this, make sure you're somewhere far from windows, in a locked room, and by the gods, not outside after dark. Because if you are, then God help you. My name is Jackie Lendrew. I doubt you've ever heard of me. It doesn't matter anyway. I'm 25 years old, and I come from a small village just down the woods. Please don't go down there, unless you got a death wish. I wouldn't say it's a perfect place, just a handful of old houses that have probably seen better days. A few small stores and roads that stretch endlessly towards towns miles away. It was isolated, sure, but you know what? It was home. Not many people lived there, but they were a bunch of kind and close community. Still, nothing could have prepared us for the events that followed. The kind I'd only ever imagined in my darkest dreams. For me, I lived in a rather small and old house that I bought for a modest sum. I wanted a fresh start somewhere far from the noisy atmosphere of city life. My father wasn't against it, and he grew up in a small village himself. I never knew my mother. My father said she died during childbirth. Now that I think about it, I wonder if this nightmare is happening only here, or if it's spreading to other places too. At first, everything was fine. Nothing strange was happening. It was a peaceful place, with nearly zero crime, and when something serious did happen, it was usually just someone getting a little too drunk. Then she went missing. A girl named Amanda. I think she was around 6 years old. She was the kind of kid who played in the same spot every day, always clutching a plush bear. I never saw her play with other children. Makes you wonder why, poor thing. Then one day, her parents entered her room and found she was just gone. No signs of a struggle. No mess. Everything looked exactly the same except for the wide open window leading out into the woods. The parents panicked and called the police, but it took a while before they arrived. When they finally came, the parents explained what had happened, and the officers immediately began searching the area alongside some of the locals. I was one of those who joined the search. Meanwhile, other officers questioned people around the village, asking if they'd seen anything suspicious or knew anything that might help find Amanda. As expected, none of them had any clue how this could have happened. All except one. He was an old man named Freddie, who lived directly across from Amanda's house. Now, Freddie, you could say, is the kind of man that the village considers its elder. He's around 81 now, and let's just say his mind isn't quite what it used to be. I don't mean he's dumb, he's just different, especially since his wife passed away 5 years ago. He still talks about watching sunsets with her in their garden, like it happened just yesterday. He told the police that, just like every day, he'd been sitting in his rocking chair by the window, watching the outside world. That was his routine. And that's when he saw it. A figure, standing in the garden of Amanda's house. Even though his eyes weren't what they used to be 30 years ago, he swore he saw someone standing there, head tilted upward, staring toward the window of Amanda's room. Now, he couldn't recall any details of the silhouette. It was just too dark. But he swore on his life that someone had been standing there. Then he heard a ring at the door. It was strange, he said. He wasn't expecting visitors, especially at that hour. He called out, "I'm coming," and glanced outside one last time. The figure was gone, completely, like it had never been there at all. He grabbed a stave and slowly stood up, heading towards the door. But just as he was about to open it, he paused, his hand hovering only a few centimeters from the handle. He didn't know what was wrong, yet it was as if his mind and body were protesting, warning him not to move. A wave of unease washed over him, though he couldn't explain why. Still, he steadied himself and carefully opened the door to see nobody. He stepped out into the cold night air and looked in all directions, even behind the door. But once again, there was nothing. No signs that anyone had ever been there. He glanced back towards Amanda's garden, hoping or fearing that the figure might still be there. "I'm too old for this," he muttered to himself before heading back inside. That's what he told the police, and from what I've heard, they weren't entirely convinced, but the part about the silhouette staring up at the window put them slightly on edge. As for me, on the other hand, I couldn't quite decide what to make of Freddy's story. Sure, he's an old man, but a part of me couldn't help believing him, even though it sounded completely absurd. You might wonder what exactly felt so absurd. If there really was a silhouette, and it somehow had something to do with Amanda's disappearance, escaping through the window, then here's the problem. That window, in her room, is nearly 4 meters off the ground, and there's no way someone could reach it without equipment. And yet it was wide open. If I had known what was really happening, I would have grabbed my things and fled without even bothering to pack everything. But how could I have known? Hours passed, and the police found no new clues or tracks of Amanda. Most villagers have returned to their homes, and while some stayed behind, still searching or trying to calm Amanda's parents, they told them everything would be okay. But if only that were true. After a failed attempt to find her, the officers had no choice but to retreat, explaining they might discover something in the woods later. But with night approaching, it would be too dangerous to continue. They did, however, promise to send 2 officers to patrol the village through the night. They suggested that everyone keep the doors locked and phones nearby, just in case. They didn't have to say it twice. I'm sure everyone had already done so. I returned home and made sure every door and window was securely closed. There are only 2 doors to my house, the front entrance and the one that led to my back garden. I also grabbed my father's old shotgun and made sure it was loaded, just in case. I never used it on anyone, but he taught me how to shoot. Back then, I had no idea that this weapon would help me survive, at least until now. I acted like everything was normal. I took a hot shower, made some dinner, turned on the TV, and settled into my living room, with my father's shotgun resting beside me. I wasn't really paying attention to the program playing. I just needed something to fill the silence. After a while, I found myself walking towards the window that looked out into the back garden. I can't explain why. I wasn't expecting to see anything, but it felt like something inside me was pulling me there. And now I wonder if I'd have paid attention to what was on the TV, maybe there would have been some warning. Maybe something that would have told me that things weren't quite right. It was 20:35, and I was home alone. After what felt like hours staring into the garden, I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Glass in hand, I returned to the window, but I stopped. I wanted to keep walking, but my body wouldn't listen. A wave of unease overtook me. Something didn't feel right. It felt as though what lay beyond that window wasn't just my garden anymore. For a moment, I just stood there, unsure of what was happening. I asked myself if something might be behind that window, and that's when I noticed my hands trembling, my skin crawling. I felt genuinely afraid, and I didn't know why. Maybe it would have been less terrifying if I knew what I was going to see out there. But not knowing? Yeah, that was worse. I was so deep in thought, paralyzed by unease, that I didn't even hear the car parked beside my house. Then came the knock. It jolted me so hard I nearly dropped my glass. At first, I just stared at the door, unmoving. A second knock followed. It snapped me out of it, I set the glass down on the nearby table and stepped towards the door. That's when Freddy's story came rushing back. The fear, the feeling of being watched, the knock on the door. For a moment, my whole body tensed. Then a voice from the other side broke through the silence. "Hello, this is the police. We're just making sure everything's okay. Could you open the door?" I looked through the peephole. Sure enough, a man about 40 stood in front of the door, his colleague standing beside the patrol car. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The police officer looked up and gave a slight nod. "Greetings. We're driving around the village to make sure everything's okay. Are you holding up, sir? Everything fine?" Yeah, everything's going fine. Haven't seen anything around here," I replied. "Just routine," he said, voice calm. "Keeping track of who's in each house. Easier to coordinate if anything happens." "That makes sense. But yeah, I'm home alone," I replied, more uncertain than truthful. The officer tilted his head slightly, then nodded, bowing his hat just a bit. He told me good night and to stay safe. I nodded back and closed the door. Then I leaned against it, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. A moment later, I looked through the peephole again, and what I saw shocked me. There was nobody outside. No car, no officers. I hadn't even heard the vehicle leave. Where are they? Were they ever really there at all? And then it came. Another knock, but not from the front door, not from the back. It sounded like someone or something was knocking on the window